Long time ago when I was 16, I had a little bit of a dilemma. I didn't know if as a career I wanted to be a country western singer or be a hog farmer. Now some people say I split the difference, became a Baptist preacher, so I don't know about that. But I loved to play the guitar and I loved to sing country western songs. I knew dozens and dozens. I might have known the words to over 100 country songs. But one of the ones I knew the words to was a song that Hank Snow recorded in 1962. I was more familiar with the version that Johnny Cash did a little bit later. The name of the song was "I've Been Everywhere Man." Let me give you one of the verses to that song. As they're talking about how they've been everywhere, man, the song goes: Boston, Charleston, Dayton, Louisiana, Washington, Houston, Kingston, Texarkana, Monterey, Faraday, Santa Fe, Tallapoosa, Glen Rock, Black Rock, Little Rock, Oskaloosa, Tennessee, Hennessy, Chicopee, Spirit Lake, Grand Lake, Devil's Lake, Crater Lake, for Pete's sake. I've been everywhere, man. It goes on talking about how they've been everywhere. Now, for somebody who can't even remember what Cheryl sent me to the store for, I find it a little bit amazing that I was able to memorize the words to that song. Because that verse, there's another 3 verses that have another approximately 25 places that they've been. Now, Hank Snow and Johnny Cash went a lot of places, I'm sure. But I don't think that they went everywhere. And I know for certain that they didn't go someplace other than the one that they were at the time that they were there. They could not be everywhere all at one time. Now God, we talked about last week, God is everywhere. God is everywhere all at the same time. God being everywhere, omnipresent, it's one of the 3 omnis that people have used to describe God. Omnipresent, God is everywhere. Omnipotent, God is all powerful. And the 3rd omni is omniscient, meaning that God is all knowing. That's what I want to talk about today. God is omniscient. God is all-knowing. I remember once seeing a little booklet, and the title of the booklet caught my eye. It said, 5 things that God does not know. And I remember thinking, wow, I don't think that's possible. I don't think that there's anything that God doesn't know. So I picked up the booklet and I skimmed through it. And according to that booklet, here are the 5 things that God does not know. God does not know a sin He does not hate. God does not know of a sinner He does not love. God does not know of a sin He cannot forgive. God does not know of a better plan of salvation than His Son. God does not know of a better time than now to receive His gift of salvation. Now that's a little bit clever, maybe a little bit corny, but the reality is that God does know everything. Have you seen the Far Side cartoon? I've looked for it and couldn't find it to show it to you, but it's a picture of God playing Jeopardy. And he has over 1 billion points, and the 2nd and 3rd contestant are still at 0. Now here's another picture, not the Far Side by Gary Larson, but here's another picture of God playing Jeopardy. Right again, God, but please wait until after I ask the question to answer. See, God does know everything. He has all knowledge. He's all-knowing. He's omniscient. Now, what does that mean for us? Well, one, God being omniscient, God being all-knowing means that He knows us better than anyone else knows us. And He loves us. A great many people have a concept that because of something they've done or because even something that they thought, they might affect God's love for them. They may affect the way that God approves of them or how they are or are not pleasing God. And this leads to a spiritual depression because we know the truth about who we are. In public and really maybe anywhere except with your own family, we can keep up a facade. We can appear to be more ethical than we actually are. We can appear to be more humble than we truly are, or that we are putting on a facade of godliness. But in truth, we all have secret lives. Now, I don't mean we're serial killers or con men who are leading a double life. I mean that we all have things about us that no one else truly knows. Maybe it's some poor choices that we've made. Maybe it's some personal thoughts or some private actions or some checkered past, guilt, broken promises. We all have some things that we would prefer to keep unknown, prefer to keep hidden. But here's the thing, God knows about every one of those things. Now that could cause some anxiety, but here's the other thing. It does not change God's love for us one iota. God knows us better than anyone else knows us, and God loves us. Now this might not touch many of you that are watching this, but you see there's many people that really have an idea that God's love for them is based upon what they do or what they think. And I want to say to you, whatever you think stands between you and God, you are wrong. You're incorrect. God's love is unconditional. God's love is unfailing. God knows us better than anyone else knows us, and God loves us. Now, there's a few aspects of this idea of God knowing us better than anyone knows us. One aspect is that God knows our fears. We're all different in this area. Some people have outer fears, some people have inner fears. Some people have occasional fears. Some people have constant, almost constant fears. Some people have a fear of what might happen. Many people have a fear of what is happening. We're all different in this area, but God knows us, and God knows us better than anyone else. And He knows our fears, and He knows how to help us through our fears. God also knows our hurts more than anyone else. He knows our hurts. Now again, we're all individuals in this, but some are carrying scars from past experiences. I had an interesting experience last summer that really made this relevant, made this a little bit more comprehensible for me to understand. You see, I had a very unpleasant experience when I was in the second grade. I had a very critical teacher that made me feel very incapable, made me feel unintelligent, made me really have some anxieties about myself. Now, I went on, I finished high school, graduated with honors. I graduated from honors at college. I went and earned a master's degree. I went on and earned a doctorate degree. And there's very few times, if any, if through the years I thought about that second grade teacher or that I thought about those insecurities that she had caused in me. But then last summer I was driving through Midland. I was out there visiting my dad, and I was driving by some of the houses that we had lived at as I was growing up. I just wanted to see what the neighborhoods were, see the house if I could identify it. And on one of those houses I found it. And then as I was leaving, I turned the corner, and suddenly I saw that elementary school that I had gone to as a second grader. I immediately had feelings of hurt. I immediately recalled repressed feelings of insecurity. I was in a funk the rest of the day. Now, I don't mean to compare my experiences with what other people are experiencing, except to say this. My experiences don't even register on the scale of some of the past experiences and some of the past scars that you might be carrying. But it made me realize how deeply past hurts can have an impact upon you. It made me realize how past hurts can affect present day feelings. And I hope it brings you comfort to know that God knows your hurts. He knows you more than anyone else, and He knows more about your hurts than anyone else, and that we're not alone in our pains. Now, one other aspect of this God knowing us better than anyone else, He knows our concerns. We each have our worries. We each have things that we're dealing with. It might be a family situation. It might be a personal situation. It might be anxiety over a problem, or it might be concern about a coming fear. But God knows about them. Now, here's the neat thing to me. There may be some type of hurt or concern that is subconscious. I really don't know about it or identify it, and it affects me, but I really can't put my finger on what it is, or I don't really think about what it is, but there's some hurt, there's some concern that I have. And it's kind of neat to me to think that God knows me better than I know myself. He knows me better than anyone else knows me, but He knows me better than I know myself. And remember that God being omniscient means that He knows me better than anyone else. Now let me go ahead to that next idea that I just mentioned. God knows us better than what we know ourselves. Here's what I mean. We know what we want. We know what we desire. But God knows more about what we truly need than we do. And God doesn't always give us what we want because He knows what we need. You might remember the Garth Brooks song where sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayers. God knows what our needs are. God knows what it is, not that we want, but He knows what is best for us, what we need, and that's what He gives us. Jesus taught about this once. He was preaching to a group, and it's recorded for us in Matthew 9, verses 29 through 30, where Jesus said, "Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? And not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father. But even the hairs of your head are all numbered." What's Jesus' point? It is that God knows us completely. He knows us better than we know ourselves. Now, one other idea I wanted to mention to you, this idea of God being all-knowing, is that God knows what the outcomes is going to be. He knows what's going to happen. We know what our worries are. We know what our problems are, but we don't know how things are going to work out. But God does. And this is where faith enters in to the equation. You might remember that there were 12 men, 12 disciples that followed Jesus during the time that He was in His earthly ministry. And we have recorded for us a time that Jesus was teaching a large crowd of people, 5,000 people. And as it came time for the noonday meal, He was going to continue teaching, but the disciples were aware that people were hungry, that they needed to be fed. And alarmed, they went to Jesus. What are we going to do? How are we going to take care of this? How's this going to work out? How are we going to feed this many people? And Jesus said, don't worry about it. And Jesus miraculously fed the crowd. That's a great story. But a short time later, we're told that Jesus again was teaching, again to a large crowd, this time 4,000 people. Now 4,000 people, that's a large crowd, but it's not as big as the 5,000 that Jesus had fed earlier. But again, the disciples began to worry, began to be alarmed, and they went to Jesus. What are we going to do? How are we going to take care of this? How is this going to work out? What are we going to do? What's the solution to this? You see, I get amused at that because they forget what happened just a few weeks or a few months before. There had been an issue. Jesus had seen the issue. Jesus had handled it. How is it possible that they had forgotten about it? But that's when I realized, wait, I've had concerns before that God has worked out. I've had hurts before. I've had fears before. I've had things before that were troubling me, but God worked it out. I didn't know what I was going to do, but God worked it out. And then I think, how is it then that I experience God working it out, but then I encounter another problem and I don't know what I'm going to do? When I don't know what I'm going to do, God already knows what He's going to do. He knows what the outcomes are going to be. Now, I hope this brings you comfort, this idea that God is all-knowing, that God is omniscient, that He knows us better than anyone else knows us, that He knows us better than we know ourselves, and that He knows what the outcome is going to be. Let's be encouraged. Let's take comfort from this idea. God knows us better than we know ourselves. God knows us better than anyone else. God knows all about us because God is omniscient. God is all-knowing.